Since his very first feature film, Zack Snyder quickly encouraged the Islamophobia fueling George W. Bush's war on Iraq, while bombarding his audience with conservative and cynical propaganda. Indeed, Dawn of the Dead, George Romero's satire on the consumer society, by which he also criticized the horrors of the Vietnam War, police brutality, and Americans who are sexually attracted to their guns and who use any occasions to kill black people, has become, in the hands of Zack Snyder, an allegory for the Christian apocalypse that humans have unleashed by having premarital sex,
You have sex out of wedlock.
same-sex relationships,
You have man-on-man relations.
and abortions.
You kill unborn children.
In short, the culprits of the 9/11 attacks according to the Reverend Jerry Falwell.
I really believe that the pagans and the abortionists and the feminists and the gays and the lesbians who are actively trying to make that an alternative lifestyle, the ACLU, People for the American Way, all of them who tried to secularize America, I point the finger in their face and say, you helped this happen.
Well, I totally concur.
While also taking time to blame Muslims for the zombie invasion. 2 years later, he adapted 300, a comic book which comes from our favorite fascist writer Frank Miller to convince his audience through the use of rape scenes that we must get rid of democracy in order to go and kill dehumanized and monstrous Persians, a film which was indeed projected to American soldiers sent in Iraq to motivate them to kill as many people as possible. In 2009, Zack Snyder adapted Watchmen, another comic this time by Alan Moore, Frank Miller's nemesis. Therefore, in order to conform Watchmen to his own worldview, Snyder turned a postmodern analysis that questioned the adoration of superheroes and criticized violence, war, and the idea that the end justifies the means, into a celebration of individual justice and an apology for violence, war, and the idea that the end justified the means. 2 years later, he made Sucker Punch. Since it wasn't based on any other pre-existing work, no one went to see it. But basically, it's a movie through which Snyder argues that women should agree to be raped in order to be freed from an alienating patriarchy. And so it was after having made all these movies that Warner Brothers saw fit to put him in charge of adapting Superman. At the time, the studio even encouraged Christian pastors and evangelists to use the film to convert non-believers. Of course, you don't have to be an Islamophobic, misogynistic, and homophobic fascist to appreciate Snyder's film.
I actually really like Batman vs. Superman.
I'm just putting Batman vs. Superman into context so that you can understand why the film was both an artistic failure and a commercial disappointment. Welcome to Frank Movie Talks, I'm Frank, and today I'm going to explore Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. Zack Snyder's adaptation of the DC Universe had been doomed since 2013's Man of Steel, in which he succeeded in transforming Superman from a usually compassionate and hopeful character into a frustrated narcissist who, like the nurse in the remake of Dawn of the Dead, realizes that saving lives and refusing to kill are weaknesses to be rid of. It's a moral that is instilled in Superman by Jonathan Kent in Man of Steel.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
Maybe.
A moral that he comes to repeat to him in Batman vs. Superman despite the fact that he died in the previous film. It's also a moral that fits the philosophy of Ozymandias, the ultimate villain in Watchmen, because in Zack Snyder's movies there's no difference between heroes and villains, except maybe that the hero must be white and macho, while the villain must be feminized and have Arab features. In fact, there's so little difference between heroes and villains in Snyder's work that often the villain's action, rather than giving the hero a hard time, actually allow the hero to get exactly what he wants. For example, Superman and Mark Zuckerberg both want to be allowed to use violence to achieve their ends. I rephrase. Superman, Mark Zuckerberg, and Batman want to be allowed to use violence to achieve their ends. And so, when Mark Zuckerberg blows up Congress, he allows Superman to get rid of everyone who disagreed with the murder he committed at the end of Man of Steel. Snyder's message here couldn't be clearer. The only way to get what you want in life is to resort to lethal violence and get rid of democracy, that nameless horror that Snyder already criticized in 300. It's precisely because Superman, Batman, and Mark Zuckerberg all have such similar values that the stakes in the film are so insignificant. Here is how Henry Cavill describes, quite rightly, the difference between Superman and Batman.
Superman is do everything by the book, and Batman is do whatever it takes.
The problem is, ever since Man of Steel, Snyder presents Superman as someone who's always ready to kill, which he still does at the beginning of BVS when he smashes a mercenary through a multitude of brick walls. Sure, he'll say later that he didn't kill anyone.
I didn't kill those men if that's what they think.
But that only proves that Snyder's Superman is either a pathological and delusional liar or completely stupid. And Batman is exactly the same character. Even though Bruce seems to resent Superman for destroying the city, he's also willing to destroy everything to win.
But we can rebuild.
In fact, Snyder tries to give the impression that his film tackles important themes, but he is content to add them artificially through useless cameos rather than to develop them through the actions of the characters, through their respective values, or even at least through pretentious and self-analytical dialogues as Nolan would have done. But in the end, he does not want to address the ideological contrast between Superman and Batman so much that he fills his already unnecessarily long film with all kinds of other characters from the DC universe, such as Wonder Woman, Doomsday, Flash, Aquaman, Cyborg, and of course Mark Zuckerberg.
The red capes are coming. The red capes are coming.
Which makes his film a succession of rambling scenes, eventually leading to the fight between Superman and Batman. But why do they fight? Because Superman, this usually warm hero who is able to communicate like an adult, prefers to dominate Batman physically rather than explain to him the manipulation exercised by Mark Zuckerberg. For Zack Snyder's Superman, there's only one way to settle disputes: kill his opponents. And he will always find an excuse to do so. Why? Because rather than seeing people as his equals, he sees them as inferior and interacts with them as little as possible. Thus, Snyder's Superman corresponds more to the evil version of the character presented in the Injustice games, or to the way in which the real Superman is perceived by Lex Luthor, Superman's worst adversary, replaced here by Mark Zuckerberg, a failed attempt to laugh at millennials.
My father named the company after himself. He was the Lex in front of the corp.
But what about Zack Snyder's Batman? Well, unlike Superman, Batman aligns more easily with Snyder's fascist and violent portrayal of all his heroes, especially in our time. Over the years in the movies, Batman has gone from a secret agent working for the American government to fight Japanese after the attack on Pearl Harbor, to a pacifist honoring JFK during the troubled 60s, to a rich defender of the status quo in a city afflicted by Ronald Reagan's economic policies which aggravate social inequalities, to a goofy and somewhat cheating character under the quiet presidency of Bill Clinton, to an anti-terrorist avenger apologizing for the crimes of George W. Bush after 9/11. It was therefore quite logical that under the presidency of Donald Trump, elected the same year as the release of the film, Batman became a CEO frustrated by the fact that he's losing money because of an illegal alien and replicating slavery practices. Because yes, if we look closely at the beginning of BVS, what annoys Bruce Wayne is that he has to give his employees permission to stop working to evacuate their offices while aliens destroy the buildings around them, a decision that Bruce makes ridiculously late considering the state of the city when he gives authorization to his employees to take cover.
I want you to get everyone out of the building right now. Understand? Let's go, come on, start moving now, people, let's go. The boss wants us out of the building, so let's make it happen.
So late that one of his employees loses legs, which does not prevent him from continuing to worship his boss,
You're the boss,
and to blame immigrants.
He's delivered a war here, and this is what war looks like.
Besides, if Superman attracts so much criticism, it is surely, as I mentioned earlier, because he interacts as little as possible with humans. His only interactions are with a CEO, another CEO, a princess, and two damsels in distress. But why does the film place so much emphasis on the rich and powerful, a bit like Stephen Mnuchin, National Finance Chairman for the campaign of Donald Trump, Secretary of the Treasury under the presidency of Donald Trump, and one of the biggest opponents to the taxing of corporations and rich people? It's perhaps because he's the one who produced the film.
Everything we do is political.
Stephen Mnuchin's appointment as Secretary of the Treasury was notably criticized by Democratic Senator Patrick Leahy, a Batman fan who survived an attack by Two-Face in Batman Forever, Ra's al Ghul in the animated series, Mr. Freeze in Batman and Robin, the Joker in The Dark Knight, and John Daggett in The Dark Knight Rises, but not that of Zack Snyder in Batman vs. Superman, a movie that was obviously designed to look like a massive tweet from Donald Trump.
We're gonna walk down to the Capitol.
A whiny tweet in which Snyder presents the most powerful people of the world as victims of a democracy that prevents them from killing whoever they want. But for Snyder's Batman to be true to the comic book character, he would have had to be presented as a smart detective. However, even if Batman has hacked into Mark Zuckerberg's computer and known for a while that he wants to attack Superman, he lets himself be foolishly manipulated until he hears the name of Superman's mother.
You're letting him kill Martha.
Which is the same as his mother, a completely earthly name, which consequently removes the desire for Bruce Wayne to attack Superman, since he is obviously not as foreign as he believed it.
Salomon, Slimane, Salomon, Zazin. Vous seriez pas un peu cousin?
Cousin? Éloigné.
Martha Kent is a character that Snyder transforms into a damsel in distress to motivate and authorize the use of violence and murder. In doing so, Snyder perpetuates a long Hollywoodian and conservative tradition which victimize white women in order to provoke fear and aggression in white men. You have to understand that for Snyder, the female characters are only defined by their relationships to the male characters. It is therefore totally incomprehensible that they appear independent.
She with you?
I thought she was with you.
And their rape must always be as eroticized and objectifying as possible. Incidentally, Snyder himself considers that his film is a sexual act carried out against those who have seen it.
Once you've lost your virginity to this fucking movie,
his fans tend to be referred as drinking the Kool-Aid, an expression meaning today that we are so dedicated to a person that we are willing to die for them, and which goes back to the mass suicide organized by Jim Jones. But it's a bad habit. In truth, it was not poisonous Kool-Aid that Jim Jones had made his disciples drink, but Flavor-Aid, the favorite drink of Mark Twight, the trainer whom Snyder worships precisely because he would be able of driving people to suicide and with whom he founded a teaching method which they named in honor of the former guru and which actors and actresses working for Snyder must go through. I repeat, it is not necessary to join the values of Zack Snyder to appreciate his films. However, when we live in a time when it's people like him who adapt Superman to the movies, and we let people like him laugh at our values and force us to change our definition of what it means to be a superhero, it's not surprising to see society regress on issues that should have been settled a long time ago. Snyder abhors compassion and tries film after film to convince us that we should never help each other. He has spent his career reappropriating progressive works to transform them into conservative propaganda, in which Superman becomes an anti-democratic narcissist and Batman a stupid and racist CEO. With such a representation of the world and such a political agenda, it was simply impossible for Zack Snyder to make a good Batman vs Superman movie. But for those who care about it, Snyder is a big fan of John Boorman's Excalibur. That's why the ending of BVS is a tribute to it, where Superman is Archer, Batman is Lancelot, Doomsday is Mordred, Mark Zuckerberg is Morgana, Lois is the Lady of the Lake, and that it's Kieran Hines who plays Steppenwolf. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this episode informative. If this is the first video you've watched from this series, know that it's part of a longer and more detailed retrospective of Batman's filmography, and by which it has already been shown that Batman has been a politicized character since its very beginnings. To make the most of this series of video essays, it is possible for you to find them in order on the channel page. Subscribe, like, comment, share, it truly helps the video to gain visibility.